What sorts of dreams do you usually see people having?
Oh, your dreams can vary hugely, right? Because we always, depending on the demographic, a huge proportion of immigrants to Canada are coming here for peace and stability, right? We've a high proportion of refugees. We've a very high proportion of permanent residents that are simply moving from developing countries to create better opportunity for themselves, or even just coming from unstable countries, right? Touching on that as well, you've economic class, right? That's typically just looking for better opportunities for yourself, but also their kids, right? Which is amazing, right? I love when I meet an immigrant and it says, look, I'm actually immigrating for this girl. And then they come in on the video conference and I meet the daughter and you kind of realize, wow, somebody with a kind of a 20-year vision, right? But then I find Western countries, we typically immigrate for lifestyle reasons. You know, we come for, we kind of come to try places out, and sometimes we stay and sometimes we don't. So it's really across the spectrum, depending on some people, you know, peace, stability, economic immigrants, and then you're looking at just lifestyle immigrants, people that just want to try living in another place, or they simply just want to travel, work and travel for a short period and then fall in love with Canada.
At moving to Canada, you not only help people find out what they have to do in order to find a job and to immigrate, but it also help them find the best location for them to move to. How different is British Columbia compared to Toronto or Ontario or Ottawa or Quebec or Nova Scotia, etc.?
It's hugely diverse, right? We're in the second biggest country in the world. The climates vary, the people vary, the political views vary. Once relocated a Polish citizen from Ireland to the Northwest Territories. I had a role came up in the Northwest Territories and I chatted to this guy and he said, oh, it's always been my dream to live near the Arctic. And like when you make things like that happen, and then he explained to me how in the Northwest Territories, they look at BC as the California of Canada. So having that perspective, right? When we're in Vancouver, we kind of have this very different perspective. It's very multicultural. It's very liberal here. But you go an hour east, it changes drastically, right? As in it's very religious. It becomes more conservative. Rural BC is very, very different to Vancouver in terms of how people look, the level of diversity. So there's so many changes. As in BC is the size of France, right? To put it in perspective. There's 65 million people in France and there's 4 million people in BC. So there's nobody here. And then you go across and you realize how vast this country is and how many different kind of ways of living there are, because sadly a lot of immigrants go towards the urban centers. I think that's kind of people playing the numbers game. They said there are more jobs in Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal. Therefore, I have a better chance of getting a job in one of those cities, where I like to encourage people to say, well, why don't you choose where you want to live and make it your business to find a job in that location, right? Right now, I would probably say, maybe 40-50% of newcomers want to be in the GTA or Vancouver. But the cost of living here, the quality of life, it can be much, much better elsewhere, especially for people immigrating with families. Mm-hmm. Cities are a young people's game, right? And I think people, newcomers especially, want to be more open to kind of regional locations or looking at smaller cities, because there's a huge diversity. Places like Ottawa, Victoria, Kelowna, these are all great cities that can offer a lot better affordability, but just a very different Canada to looking at the major urban centres.